Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. It's Coram and Justin Nielsen here with a breakdown of the action in today's session, Monday, September 11th, where we saw strength in the Nasdaq with Meta and Tesla, two notable movers.
Yeah, so we'll go over both of those, and we'll go ahead and add Trane Technologies, which, unlike what you might think, it's actually an industrial name, not a technology stock. So,
Yeah, Trane
but we'll take
Tech.
a look at that.
Yeah, exactly. We'll take a look at those three stocks. But first, let's take a look at the major indexes. The Nasdaq, a nice open, and then strengthened into the close after a little bit of early weakness, finishing up 1.1% on the day. The S&P 500 up 0.7%. The Dow with a 0.25% gain, and the Russell 2000 up 0.2%. So the Nasdaq getting above a key technical level here, Justin. But is it enough to make you uber bullish right now?
Well, Uber was actually one of the stocks I was going to talk about too, but we talked about it last week. And, I like what Ed said on last Friday's SMT video is, that it still feels like a market where we can go either way. Now, I think, last week we kind of fell off the fence on one side, but maybe we were hanging by some clothes, getting caught on that fence. Now we've kind of flipped over to the other side, but I'd still say that we're hanging over, the edge by our clothes. We're not really fully there yet. So I like that the Nasdaq Composite got above its 50-day moving average line. That's a positive. And you saw some stocks that were looking really strong, but a lot of those were in those mega cap areas. And when you look at breadth, that was something that had a little bit to be desired. So just as you were mentioning the indexes, the S&P 500, was up, it was up, but not nearly as much as the Nasdaq. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up only 0.25%, and the Russell 2000 up less than that. So if you look at the S&P 500, it also got above the 50-day moving average line, which again is good. Not quite to that 4,500 level, but still positive. But the move here, 0.63%. Look at RSP, the equal weighted S&P 500 ETF. That was up only 0.2%. So a very different look. I was looking at some of the advancers versus decliners indicators on Thinkorswim, and it looks like on the Nasdaq, it was about 2,200 to 2,000. And on the NYSE, it was about 1,600 to 1,300. That's not overwhelming advancers over decliners, not what you would expect from such a strong looking day. So those aspects of breadth are still lacking. And that's one of the things that's bothering me a little bit right now. Look, if you've got, some of these stocks that are working, some of those big heavyweights in the indexes that are kind of showing moving the indexes to strength, whereas a lot of other stocks might not be participating, then you can probably be okay. But if you're trying to broaden out, that might be something that's a little bit tougher for you to make progress.
Let's take a look at 0TNX. This is the 10-year Treasury yield up today. So impressive to see the Nasdaq with the kind of gain that it had with interest rates on the rise. But were Tesla and Meta just doing all the heavy lifting?
They were doing a lot of it. And look, the 10-year Treasury yield being up, this is something that we have to keep an eye on. Also, it's worth noting that we've got some inflation data coming up. We've got the CPI coming out on Wednesday, and then I think we've got the PPI coming out on Thursday. So there's, two key reports that are going to be coming out that a lot of investors are going to be looking at, because we're still trying to gauge, hey, what's going to happen at this next Fed meeting for the rest of the year, and where, how much more will the Fed have to do? And could they potentially do too much to push us into a harder landing and more of a recession? So these are the things that are going to be on investors' minds as these economic data indicators come out.
So we have that to look forward to later on in the week. And we also have Oracle earnings tonight, Adobe later this week. We'll have to see how AI related stocks and software stocks react to that. A couple more ETFs to take a look at before those individual movers. Here's a look at XLE. So this is the biggest down day that we've had for XLE in a little while here, Justin, off by 1.3%, volume picked up. But this has been one of the leading groups. So can we get too mad at it for taking a little bit of a break today as tech picks up the baton again?
Right. I don't think you can get too mad at it, but at the same time, you have to be aware of it.
Hmm.
This is something that's been running for a while, and it kind of tells you, hey, this is why it's important that you try not to buy extended, because a lot of
Right.
these stocks that we've been looking at, the time to get in was, a few weeks ago, and we've been trying to find alternative entries and everything like that, but this is something that we've been talking about for, well, actually, it's getting to months now,
Yeah.
really since June. And
Hmm.
so if you were kind of coming late to the party and coming as it was getting up to these previous resistance levels, then you're kind of not in such a great position. So that's just something to be aware of. This is why it's important that you don't chase stocks and you don't think, oh, well, this is where the strength is. And I missed the initial move, and now I have to get in because everyone's making money in oil. A lot of times, if you're that person that's late to the party, you're the one that ends up cleaning up.
Hmm. Let's go to IGV. So speaking of software, here's a look at the sector, up about 0.8%. So continuing this march higher on the right side of a base.
Yeah, so IGV, I've been very impressed with how well this looks. As much as the Nasdaq composite was seeing weakness, this was holding up above its 50-day moving average line, no problem. Relative strength line soaring. Now, granted, it has a lot of the big heavyweights in here, including Adobe, Oracle, Microsoft. The list goes on. So that's something that's been helping this one. Because of those heavy weights that it has. But I thought it was pretty impressive that it's held up well. Now, SMH, the
Right.
semiconductors, have been showing a little bit of a different picture here. I mean, given how strong the Nasdaq was, it was a little strange that we didn't see that participation from SMH, which is the VanEck Semiconductor ETF. I would have liked to see more participation here. Certainly, one of the things that was dropping this was Nvidia.
Right.
Nvidia didn't have, the greatest of days. That was
Yeah.
down, almost a full percent. So that was something that was kind of, you know, pushing the SMH down a little bit. But I would really, again, like to see more breadth. I'd like to see more oars rowing in the same direction, as opposed to this sloppy, like, oh, I'm going to row on this side now. Oh, I'm going to row on this side now. Oh, I'm going to go in a different direction. That's where it becomes very difficult to make progress in your portfolio.
Hmm. And here's a look at QQEW, with a gain of 0.8% today, less than the Q's 1.2% gain, but not in a terrible position.
Mhm.
Right at that 50-day line, kind of breaking a little bit of a downtrend here. So we'll have to
Right.
see if these pockets of tech can start picking back up again in a meaningful way.
Yeah,
Okay.
QQEW definitely looks better than RSP.
Oh, yeah.
Because again, RSP, what I didn't like about RSP was the fact that it got to its 50-day moving average line and got turned away. So that just kind of tells you, and you can see this if you're looking at, indicators of how many, what percentage of stocks are above their 50-day moving average lines, above that 200-day. And this last correction in August really sent them from a high percentage to a pretty low percentage pretty quickly.
Hmm. Well said, Justin. Let's take a look at Tesla. Definitely a standout in today's session and finishing on a high note, too. Up more than 10%, had strong volume behind this move as well. So, presenting an aggressive entry here today for traders who wanted to pick up some shares, especially a little bit earlier on in the session when it was up, 6, 7%. Waiting until it's up 10% on the day just raises the risks of buying extended. But what are your thoughts on the move here on the Morgan Stanley upgrade?
Yeah, I think again, it's not the upgrade itself, but it's also the reaction to it. And granted,
Yeah.
the upgrade, it had some positive things it was talking about. It wasn't just one thing. It was really kind of talking about the future and the catalyst for a potential higher valuation. Case for Tesla. And that really had to do with what analyst Adam Jonas called Tesla's supercomputer Dojo. Now, Dojo is it's a custom supercomputer that Tesla uses to help train the full self-driving FSD for Tesla cars. And this is where the automation, the AI, all of these things that are kind of really top of mind for investors are really kind of capturing their imagination in some ways. And so Elon Musk, of course, was tweeting out on X, formerly known as Twitter, about how that's really where Tesla's focus is, on the AI, the automation, the robotics, all of these things that are going to put Tesla away from the auto manufacturing only to more of that technology, software, and AI type of company and automation.
Right. So with the stock now carving the right side of the base, for traders who maybe missed the stock a little bit earlier on in the session Monday, what should they be looking for it here to
Well,
do?
you have to have your limits in place, So where would the exact right time to buy? It was really kind of at the open, and leaderboard was pretty quick on putting this right on the leaderboard product early on in the session, right at like 263 was the price that it was putting it on at. So very early on, and it already has like almost a 4% or more profit on that position. So now, if you are, starting here late after it's already gone up 10% from an ideal purchase point, you might just have to wait for it to consolidate a little bit more, maybe get up to that 300 level, see how it handles itself. The important thing to realize is that just because a stock you feel like it's gotten away from you doesn't mean that it's going to be the last chance ever to buy that stock.
Right.
Tesla has given you multiple chances to buy this over the last decade. So I don't think it's going to be the last time to buy Tesla, but you have to be careful, because just because you buy Tesla and Tesla is a stock that goes up, it doesn't mean you're going to make money on it unless
Right.
you are handling it properly.
Yeah, exactly. And just like Mark Minervini was telling you guys on the podcast last week, that discipline
Yeah.
above all else really is what creates prosperity in the long run.
Yeah, he was really warning against that. Don't go out and say, "Oh, just this once, I'm going to buy this stock," because you have to really just kind of take that out of your mentality, and it either is following your rules and within your guidelines, or it's not. And if it's not, no matter how exciting or how much you might be getting pushed into it because of the noise around you saying buy, 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 you've got to stick to your rules.
Yes. Let's take a look at Meta, also strengthened after hitting maybe a little bit of resistance early on in the session, but closing up nicely, 3.25%. We did not get above average volume behind this move here today, Justin, but Meta also arguably presenting an early entry here,
Yeah,
and
and
one that's
definitely.
not extended.
Yeah, not extended. It was up 3% today, but I think that's still, absolutely viable. But you brought up some very important points here. The volume today, not above average. You look at Thursday of last week, that was above average, a big outside day. Now it closed kind of mid-range. Meta has been just really kind of hugging this 50-day moving average line. So we've talked about the tight action that's been going on. It got a little wiggly there on Thursday, but it's also really hovered right at this 300 level. So today was the pop above that 300. That was kind of what we were waiting for.
Yep.
Is it going to break one way or the other? If it had broken down below 274, I think we would be having a different discussion on Meta. But because it did break above that 300 level, this is now something that is, buyable. Now, it does have those kind of caveats where it doesn't have the volume, things like that. But sometimes you can have lower volume on stocks that have, maybe if you go to the weekly chart here,
Sure.
real quick, you can kind of see that it does have these blue volume spikes that have been here for a while. So it's not like there's no volume in this stock. It's not like there's no institutions that are interested in this. You can tell that institutions are interested just by the price action and the volume that's kind of gone along with it to the upside. So not having it on today doesn't nearly bother me as much. But hey, look, this is one of those things that you're going to be using the feedback of the market. If you do make a position, do get a position in Meta, how does it handle itself? Is it something that you make money on, or is it something that kind of goes flops back and forth, or comes right back below that 50-day moving average line? So I think that you can have a pretty tight stop here, not risk too much for a
Right.
lot of potential reward if that gets back up to highs.
Totally agree. And one final detail I'd like to point out on this intraday chart here, that reversal day last Thursday, if you look at that, where did it really clear that resistance and then find support?
Yep.
Right at that level. So we'll have to see if it can continue to hold above that and find support.
Amazing how that happens. A lot of times these prior areas of resistance, and you can see it hit its head right around that 306 level a couple times. That's exactly where it found that support. So exactly what you'd like to see. And we should also mention that there was some news driving this as well. Wall Street Journal reported that they are Meta is in development on an AI program that is potentially going to rival ChatGPT by OpenAI. So again, this whole AI thing is still very top of mind for a lot of investors, and that's one of the things that was driving Meta forward today.
Well said. Let's take a look at TT. This is Trane Technologies in the industrial machinery group. Looks like it broke out of a narrow base today here, Justin.
Yeah, so again, this is not transportation, not that type of train, and it's not technology really. It's kind of more industrial, but it's to increase the productivity and efficiency of industrial areas. So, using climate control units and so on. If you go to the weekly chart on this, you can see that this did get support at the 10-week moving average line. And while it wasn't labeled on the daily, this is labeled here by pattern recognition as a flat base, a depth of only 7%. And look, we saw a lot of flat bases out there. So with August, as bad as it was, at sending a lot of stocks below their 50-day moving average lines, you had a lot of stocks that were holding above their 10-week lines, very, very mild corrections, especially in relation to the market. And you also saw, if you just kind of hover away from the base real quick, so we can see the relative strength line. You see that relative strength line has really kind of skyrocketed here, moved up in a big way. So those are things that I've been looking for in this market, because that just kind of speaks to what has the potential to lead in the next rally. And it's these things that have the best relative strengths, that didn't come down as much, that resisted the downward market pressure. Those are the things that I'm most interested in. And look, there have been a lot of these mega cap companies that are also fitting that bill, but Trane Technologies is one that's a little bit smaller and is in a little bit of a different area. So if you're looking for some diversification, this might be one to consider. And I should also mention, it's something that we did put on Swing Trader today.
Oh, nice. Yeah, let's take a look at the intraday. We were talking about this one on IBD Live. I can't remember exactly when it was. I feel like it was in lightning mode, so maybe a little bit later on in the show. But yeah, a nice mover here today. Thanks for that, Justin. And thanks everyone for tuning in. That is it for today, but we will be back with more tomorrow morning on IBD Live. And we hope you join us, investors.com/IBD Live, for all the details on that. We will see you there. And just want to take a moment to recognize 9/11. We will never forget, and we are thankful for everyone who made the ultimate sacrifice for us in defending our freedom. And our hearts go out to the families impacted and the lives lost. We will always remember. Thanks, everyone, and see you tomorrow.